From CBS News Miami, this is Facing South Florida with Jim DeFede.
Welcome to Facing South Florida. I'm Jim DeFede. In January, committees in Tallahassee will begin meeting and drafting bills for the upcoming legislative session. There is a lot of uncertainty surrounding this year's legislature. Will legislators begin to push back against Governor DeSantis now that he's a lame duck? Will DeSantis even be governor, or will he end up in the Trump administration? The only thing we know for sure is that Republicans have maintained their supermajority in both the House and the Senate. One issue that will likely be front and center is the affordability crisis in Florida. What will legislators do to deal with the high cost of living in this state? This week, I spoke to Republican State Representative Chip LaMarca, and we started by discussing the assessments now being levied against condo owners.
Well, so I think the most important thing is that every condo that that fits the description under the bill of 3 stories or higher that needed to have inspections and structural integrity reserve studies done has done that. I know my mom lives in a condo in Boca, and I have some family in and around here in Broward that are in condos, and those inspections have been done, and some came back saying, hey, there's a little bit of work we need to do, and here's what it's going to cost. Here's what it will cost over 5 years and of the last useful life, and here's when you're going to have your money in the bank. And then there's others that have more issues because, quite honestly, some buildings have neglected and kicked the can down the road, as we say. It's unfortunate, that those expenses are there. I mean, they're the expenses that we face with a single family house. You either invest and seal your roof and make sure it's not leaking, or you'll replace your roof at some point. So I'm certainly not representing Galt Mile, Pompano Beach, Deerfield Beach, lots of condominiums in District 100. I'm not blind to the fact that that everyone's looking for a solution to this, and it's not an easy solution. I know that Miami-Dade County came up with a plan where they're doing no interest loans up to a period of a certain lengthy period, but a small amount of money. But typically, it would get most folks over that hump. I haven't seen anything from Broward County yet. I would hope that they are looking into that as much as they're looking at housing affordability in other ways, because our folks who live in condos are really no different than the ones that probably previously lived in a single family house. They still have expectations to be able to live in a safe building that's they feel that they can live out the rest of their years. And so I think that's
really, I think you've actually captured it perfectly. I mean, that's really the struggle. You have some condominium associations, some condo owners who have been responsible, who have maintained their buildings, and you've had others who have, I always find it amazing when I hear complaints from people who say, I haven't had an assessment in 30 years. Why should I suddenly have an assessment? Well, that's the problem. You haven't had an assessment. And for folks, as you said, who live in single family homes, the state's not bailing me out when I need to put a new roof on my house. And it seems like that's the tension that you have to sort of walk. So is it trying to find those creative solutions that are maybe on the more local level rather than the state level? I know the governor had floated the idea of maybe 0 interest loans from the state. But I don't get the sense from Speaker Perez that that's an issue that's going to fly.
So here's what I'll say about that. Obviously, as a member of the Florida House, I'm one of 120 in my last 2 years. Speaker Perez has been firm on that. I think that I will leave it to the governor and Speaker Perez and President Albritton to kind of have that conversation. I would certainly advocate for certain things that would be helpful in that space, but I understand the end of the day, the most important thing is the safety of our residents. And the Miami Herald wrote an article last week that showed that there's some other buildings possibly with issues. I just want to make sure that everybody's safe first. And to your point, Jim, I think they can probably work something out, but I also believe that locally we can figure out a plan. For example, in Broward, where you have a high concentration of condominiums, where there's some type of revolving opportunity for people to do that. And it's not everybody in the building. When we read these stories, there's a crisis. Yes, we have other expenses that come with it, inflation and the cost of gas, cost of food, insurance, property insurance, car insurance. But the amount of folks that really need some help in this space, I think if we work together with locals, we can figure out a way to do it. But that's one issue, and just overall affordability. I think people are constantly looking at what does this year's insurance look like as opposed to last year's insurance. The good news is we've had more than a dozen carriers file rate report their rates at their future rates at a lower decreased rate than last year, and then the vast majority of the rest of them were neutral. So I mean, we see a slowing down, if not a stopping of the increases. At some point, well, we hope to see it go down a little bit, but I just don't think that, like everything else, you're going to see gas or the cost of a car or anything else go back to where it was in some fictitious point in time that we thought maybe it's pre-COVID or whatever it might be. So I think just trying to make things more affordable overall here in Broward County. We've got 2 million people in Broward County, and my job is to look out for the folks in my district. But having served the entire county as a commissioner, I think it's important we keep that in mind when we're up there.
Is there anything legislatively more to do when it comes to the insurance issue?
The biggest issue that I've seen that could probably, and the folks the insurance experts, the folks that really are in this space can offer more detail. But the big picture is kind of the reinsurance, having a backstop for the insurance companies. At the end of the day, if we remove the over litigation of some of these things, and we knew that was there, but it wasn't the only issue. And we also created a reinsurance program, and we created other situations where it would entice markets to bring in insurance companies. That's all well and good until you have 2 major storms in a year, until you continue to have inflation to rebuild. So I do believe there's more that could be done. I can't speak specifically of bills that would come out, but I think probably in the space of reinsurance or backstop. I mean, I think you might even could even quote my member of Congress who's been talking about a national catastrophic fund. That was talked about under Mel Martinez when he was U.S. Senator in 2006 and 7. But the folks up north didn't want to hear it from Florida because we had just had 5 hurricanes. Post that they had Superstorm Sandy. So every state has an issue, with natural disasters, fires out west. I think if there was some type of backstop nationally to bring down rates, we would see something change there as well. And as you're reading some of these articles that are out there, Florida is not the worst place to live for insurance. It's certainly a challenge, but every state has some of those issues that we've got to get our arms around.
This is the first chance we've had a chance to talk since the November election. If there was any doubt that Florida is a red state, I think that was dispelled on November 5th. I want to get your take. Why do you think Republicans saw the gains that they saw here in Florida across the state in November?
I think it's what we're talking about. From the GOP position, we worked hard to do registration over many years. I know from the chair of the state party as opposed to the chair of the Democratic Party, there's a strategy, right? Evan Power had helped with the House and Senate majorities to make sure that we kept certain seats and worked on those. Whereas our friend Nikki Fried decided to put someone in every single race, and I think that was an absolute failure. And I mean, the fact that she knows this district where I serve, and they put somebody in this district when she could have spent that money somewhere else trying to take out one of the Republicans. So I think people appreciate, at least on the bigger picture, the policy that we're doing. And we want to be a free market state where you can practice your business as long as it's legal business and raise your family and not have to worry about being unsafe.
You mentioned that you've got 2 years left in your term as state house. There has been speculation as to you possibly running for a state Senate seat or running for a congressional seat, perhaps against Jared Moskowitz. I'm not expecting you to announce anything here today, but what is your thinking as you sort of weigh what the next step may be for you?
Well, my thinking is my wife, who's been with me throughout this process of 20 years in public office, of 30 years of marriage, we'll have a conversation. Fact is, I talk to Congressman Moskowitz fairly regularly. It's a healthy relationship, and I speak to the Senate seat, for example, may or may not be vacant in 2026. Senator Pizzo has 4 more years there, but he may decide to do something else. There's speculation there. So I think the biggest decider in that process is sit down, have a conversation with my wife. I mean, see where our lives are at this point. Do you want to get on a flight every Monday morning, come back on Thursdays to Washington, D.C. or do you want to go to Tallahassee, which is actually harder to get to? And quite honestly, I mean, in the blink of an eye, or my congressman could be doing something else. I mean, as you saw that there was consideration of the FEMA position. So I don't know. I can tell you this. When I decided to put myself forward in public service to the city of Lighthouse Point and then the county and then the state legislature, the one model of an individual I always thought was somebody I'd like to emulate in kindness, but also firmness is Congressman Clay Shaw. Has served for 26 years in the Congress. And one of the most admirable things to me in watching him work was he got the things that we needed to get done for our community, but he also got them done working with, a gentleman named Bob Graham to bring funding back for the Everglades, or work on things when you don't disagree with when you don't agree with somebody, you don't have to be disagreeable. You can actually have friendships there. So I think whatever that decision is, we'll make it, a little bit down the road, and I'd be happy to have a conversation with you when I know something.
Is that an age, though? I'm fascinated by what you just talked about with regard to Clay Shaw and Bob Graham, and those were, bygone days. But are those days gone? Are those days gone? I mean, it doesn't seem like that is the attitude that we have right now, whether it's in Washington or even to some extent Tallahassee. I know you have been bipartisan in nature, and I know that you work across the aisle, but that isn't the norm.
It's probably not the majority. I'd like it to be I'd like that ability to work together on things. I mean, we've had some controversial bills where you didn't expect to see somebody from the minority caucus be a co-sponsor on for social media and things like that for children, and we did. So I think there's opportunities, and I would call on my Republican colleagues and also ask my Democrat colleagues to find things you can work on with somebody. Typically for me, that's been like we talked previously about Kid Care, the Florida Healthy Kids program, which I hope gets properly funded and move forward. But typically that's going to be appropriations, right? In a place like Broward, where I'm the only Republican, I look to Senator Pizzo or Senator Osgood to get projects funded for our municipalities and our different nonprofits. So we do work together, even if it's not outside of debating a bill or working on a bill together, because ultimately when we think about funding for bridges and roads back here in the district, the Democrats use those bridges, Republicans use those bridges, and an escalating number of nonpartisan people use those bridges.
When we come back, we'll be joined by Democratic State Representative Anna Eskamani. Stay with us.